Ready to go?
Good to go.
Good. Okay. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the topic for this session is using positive political strategies for project success. And I think we're going to have some fun, talk about a few of the things, and I hopefully it will be able to help you how to use your political strategies for project success. My name is Vijay Verma. I worked for 39 years managing projects at Triumph. Some of you wonder what this Triumph is. It's an acronym. It stands for Tri University Meson Facility. It's a particle accelerator lab where we accelerate the particles to 75% of the speed of light. Then we smash them into various targets and produce all kinds of subatomic particles to do physics research, chemistry research, and most important is the medical research. We make radioisotopes, which are sent to all the hospitals. We had a proton therapy program where we were treating eye tumors for glycoloma. And we also had a treatment facilities using pions, which is the sister particles of mesons, to actually treat prostate cancer. I wrote 3 books for PMI, which were published by PMI on the human aspects of project management, because I really believe projects are done by people. So the first one was organizing projects for success. Second is the human skills for the project manager. And the third one is managing the project team. Actually, this third book won a David Cleland PMI Literature Award from PMI. So after writing these books, I had a very brutal schedule. I was really started working on this at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then 10 o'clock at night, and then we'll work until 3 o'clock. So my wife told me no more books. So I've been trying to persuade her or influence her because some of my books deal with the topic of influencing. And I was able to write another book, which really was inspired and motivated. I was motivated and inspired by students who said we need something on the politics, positive side of it. So this book, The Art of Positive Politics, a key to delivering successful project, was launched in 2018 at Project World Conference in Toronto. So that these are the various questions and issues about politics in project management. First of all, these are the questions. What is the purpose and the dynamics of politics? Why do we really need to know about it? And I want to make it clear here that the politics I'm going to talk about today in this session is related to organizational politics or the project politics. And wherever there are people in projects, and that's what we have, there will be politics. And I'm going to talk about what is positive politics. Some people may wonder. Actually, in a nutshell, it is nothing other than creating a culture of more collaboration, teamwork, and synergy. And we'll talk about how to create and use it. How do you analyze the political landscape? We all have faced this situation. There are so many people in the organization, and it's so political. How do I analyze this landscape, and how do I understand the political positions and behaviors? How do you survive and progress when you are swimming with sharks without being eaten alive? Some people feel that they are in an organization where lots of people are very selfish and they're using politics in order to drive their own agenda. So how do you deal with that without being eaten alive by that? The next one is converting your adversaries and opponents into your allies. Because in reality, as I said, projects are done by people. So basically, the more allies you have, better you're able to get the project successfully done. So the idea is to get more and more allies. So how do you convert your adversaries and opponents into your allies? How can you manage politics effectively at the upper management level and at the project level? So the other questions are, I just want to emphasize this thing, which is not really a question, but it's like more a statement that politics are inevitable on project environments. Whether we like it or we dislike it, it doesn't really make any difference. Politics are not going to disappear. You will disappear, not the politics. So ignoring the external and internal politics surrounding your projects can be detrimental. So what should you do? And I think that's the kind of session you are in. And I hope I'll be able to help you with that kind of issue and the questions. So the idea is, how do you navigate your organizational and the project politics to deliver successful projects? The learning objective is you will understand the dynamics and complexity of power and politics, because power and politics are very highly interrelated. When I do a 2-day seminar on power, influence, and politics, the first day is spent on how to increase your power and influence. And the second day is spent on how do you use your power effectively so that you don't get clobbered and you get projects done successfully. So the idea of power is that you have to have a power in order to really deal with politics successfully. That's very important. And also, again, I emphasize on informal power and also using your power mostly in an informal way, but not be shy to use it in a formal way, but only as a last resort. I talk about the 6 phases of a troubled project, which sets the scene for the politics idea. We'll talk about 2 types of politics, negative and positive, and then various reasons for politics, and analyze 3 positions regarding political behavior and enhance trust and agreement to manage stakeholders. These are the 6 phases of a troubled project I want to share with you. This is really how the projects get in trouble. So the scenario is you have been trying to bid, or your organization have been trying to bid on a government project for the last 3 years, $20 million project. Unfortunately, you have not been selected as a successful bidder. This year you got lucky and your team worked very hard and you have been selected as a successful bidder and you got the contract. So the first phase you go through is enthusiasm. You celebrate, you open up the bottles of champagne, and everybody's happy. And there are always some wise people in the group, and they would say, just a minute. I think we've been drinking for 1 full week. Can we open up the project requirement document or the bid document and try to understand what is it that we promised? And then you open that up, read through that one, and you get to disillusionment. It means, oh my God, is this what we promised? That is unachievable. We are really in trouble. So some of those wise people say that, look, guys, you have spent 1 week in drinking. You have spent 1 week in getting depressed and disillusioned. So 2 weeks are already gone out of the project schedule. We better get started. And somebody says, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do some front-end planning. And some people say, just a minute. We have no time left for planning. Let's do it. And then you start working in panic. So what happens when you work in panic? Well, you make mistakes, lots of rework, the quality is not good, irrational decisions are being made, lot more, the costs are going up, the schedule is delaying, but we kind of say, oh, we are PMPs, so we don't really make mistakes. But let me tell you, when you see people working in a panic, like a chicken without the head, the next 3 phases are going to happen. Okay, that's very likely. And those phases are search for the guilty, punish the innocent ones, and praise and honor for the non-participants. So the question is, who are the guilty? Are the people generally who worked very hard? Who are the innocent ones who get punished? And that is you, the project managers. And the praise and honor the people who get are the people in the management who know where the pictures for the annual reports are being taken. And you, hardworking project manager, is not in those pictures because you are in your office working on Microsoft project, working on spreadsheets, estimating and forecasting schedules and budgets. And that is why it happens. So let me just tell you how to cope with phases 4 to 6. First one, search for the guilty. What you do is keep your head low. Punishment of the innocent one, you as a project manager, you need to go out and do some quality networking so that you are in touch with the people who are making decisions, shakers and movers. So, and the networking means you nurture your network and you feed your network. Now, the non-participant means that the picture for the annual reports, you must make sure, as I talked about the allies before, that there's somebody in those pictures standing who says, just a minute, let me get Kevin, because he's the one who really helped me a lot in getting this project done good so far. Okay, so he calls Kevin, and if Kevin is in picture, then it is Kevin's responsibility to make sure that his team leads are also in the picture. Now, if it is very difficult logistically to do it, get them in the picture at that time, make sure that your team leads are recognized at a different forum, because you shine only if your team makes you shine. Okay? And how do you avoid these phases? Is through good front-end planning and creative leadership. Let me just introduce you this model that I developed when I wrote my 3 books, which were published by PMI. And I believe very strongly that the teamwork, leadership, and communication are the 3 things which is really very important to get the most out of your people and effective project human resource management. But in addition to that, when I did this picture with the help of with the help of it, I did all my diagrams, quite a few of them, with the help of my children. So I'll bring them in the kitchen table. And my daughter said initially, when I just had the triangle, and said, "Daddy, this is not a very good picture, very good diagram. You need to do something better to it." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, draw a wiggly line around this triangle." I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "I don't know." So I drew a circle around it. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" She said, "Yeah, that looks better." And I said, "Well, how do you explain it?" And she said, "That's your problem, not mine." And then I thought about it, and I reached a conclusion that it is actually the internal and external culture, as well as the politics, which affects all of these 3 sides of the triangle. Leadership is different in different cultures. Leadership in our culture means that the leader will ask us our input, incorporate our input into their planning, and then proceed. Okay? Whereas there are some cultures where leaders are expected to make decisions, and that's it. Okay? So, but is one better than the other? It all depends upon the circumstances. For example, if your house is on fire, you dial 911, captain jumps out of the truck. Do you want him to have a team meeting to figure out who should do what? No. At that time, he should take charge and say, "You do this, and you do that," and that's it. Communication is even harder, because in communication, the total message impact is 7% words and 93% is nonverbal. And the breakdown of that 93% is 38% is the vocal tone and 55% is the body language. And the 7% looks good if the other 93% is good. So the cultural aspects are important. Politics is important because, especially the cultural one, because the body language signals are different in different cultures. I think one has to keep this thing into consideration whenever you're communicating with your stakeholders. Power, influence, and politics. Just wanted to say a few things. Using power and influence effectively while favorably navigating organizational politics is essential. Power is one of the most important factors. Politics are inevitable, as I said. You will disappear, but not the politics. And skillful politicking and power brokering are very important. So I'm going to talk about organizational politics. Sidney Hillman says it's a science, which I did not quite agree. I thought it has to be added. It's an art. That's why some people are good at it and some people are not good at it. And you have to be able to learn how to navigate your politics, not just participate in politics in a negative way. Otherwise, you will end up being governed or work for inferiors. We'll talk about here what is organizational politics. Politics are inevitable in a project environment, as I said. It can be both positive and negative, and I'll come into that a little bit later on. Negative politics is just emphasizing on I, myself, and positive politics is how do we deal with each other effectively. Emphasis is on we. More on organizational politics, I will say a little bit, types of political behaviors, why do we have politics, how to control political behavior, who engages in negative politics. There are some special breeds of people. And this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, positions regarding political behavior. Regarding political behaviors, quite a few stakeholders in the organization take one of these 3 positions. Either they are naives, which I also call flounders, or they are acting like sharks, or they are politically sensible. And what we talk about in our workshop, we may not have time to go through into the details, is what are their attitudes, what are their intentions, and what are their strategies. positive politics means what I really like people to do is after this session, stop being naive, don't become sharks because that's not a very good life. And the using positive politics to get the project success is learn to be politically sensible. And that's the message I want to take you to take away today. Stop being naive, don't try to become sharks, and be politically sensible. And I will talk about what a political sensible person looks like. Okay. So I think I just want to talk about now the attributes of negative politics and their purposes. So for some of the things that people say about politics, I've talked about quite a few project managers. Well, politics are hidden and personal agendas. Politics are about favoritisms. Politics are about power struggles, power wars. Politics are bad and unpleasant. That's really what the view naives have. Politics are negative. Naives think that way. But other people think, when you look at the positive side a little bit, that politics are the way to push your ideas and ways to do things. And politics are unspoken rules. And I think it's very important when you become politically sensible person, you need to understand those unspoken rules to get things done. Other things is politics is about satisfying ego. It represents invisible currents. Politics are a way to make people do things your way. It's all about relationship, whom you know and how well. And politics involve negotiations behind the back doors. And politics are about the good old boys network. It's about getting what you want by using your network. But here, that's what I mean is not using negative politics, not forcing people, but using positive politics to get what you want by using your network. That's really what I'm talking about too. So the negative politics is, we all know that. I'm not going to go into this at all too much. Finger pointing, control over people, budget and other resources, hidden and competing agendas. Hidden means your own agenda, subjective decisions, favoritisms, functional silos, and just trying to take revenge. This is what I do want to talk about, 10 commandments of positive politics. So if you are in an organization at a decision-making level, like a management, then these are the kind of things or a culture you need to create, whereby what will happen is, as I said, politics you cannot eliminate totally, is always going to be there. So what you should do as a management is to understand the organization and see how you can minimize the negative impact of politics. That is what is very important. And to minimize the negative impact of politics, you have to create positive politics. This was my approach. That because you can't eliminate that, so let's create positive politics so that you divert the attention of people from the negative side to the positive side. One of the top ones is developing organizational strategies and goals. Because if you don't have that, then people make their own goals, their own perceptions of what the organizational strategies should be, and start working on that. And they could be working cross purposes rather than all in the same direction. So what management needs to do is establish organizational goals and strategies and communicate properly with all the required levels in the organization. And the most important is gain buy-in, because if you do not have the buy-in, then you're just doing a formality of letting people know the strategies and goals or putting them on the website and so on, which is not good enough. So gaining buy-in, I want to really drive hard on that. Build honest alliances, which means that you call your vendors, your stakeholders, suppliers as the partners. Using the word partner is a good one. Focus on collaboration, not on competition, because competition mostly goes to the win-lose emphasis, and collaboration is a win-win. Develop synergy and teamwork, and the management says, folks, we really mean quality is very important here, which means doing the right things the right way the first time. Very important the first time, so that the resources have not been wasted. Providing support and training, and encouraging sharing of information. Let me say quickly something about it. Most people feel that they like to hoard information, and the more they can hoard, the more powerful they will become. No, I think the sharing of information should be encouraged. These days, it is the information technology era. We have websites, we have all the things. And another thing about information is, which is kind of an informal power, that the more you share, the more you get. And the reward system should be objective. And now you should also say that we have a good mentoring system. And because there's a lot of diversity always in every organization, you say that in this organization, from now on, to minimize the negative impact of politics, we're going to embrace cultural diversity. And our main aim will be to capitalize on the cultural differences. And I think that's very, very important. Okay. So what I really wanted to share with you is those three actually views about different positions, naives, sharks, and politically sensible. And I will talk about only political sensible people because that is really what I want you to do in order to use your positive politics. Before you do that, and in order to manage your stakeholders, the most important thing is remember these three truths. These are the three truths of life. I call it even simple three truths of life that I learned from my mom when I was a child. And she was a very, very intelligent woman. She only went to school up to grade 4. She taught me many, many things. And later on, while writing books, I try to put a management spin on it or management ideas on it or the idea. So the first one is it's people who make or break things. And these are really simple. That's why I call them simple three truths of life. It's people who make things happen, and it is people who prevent things from happening. So remember, projects are done by people, not just by software packages. Second truth is people do mostly what is in their personal best interest. Everybody's asking this question. Why should I do it? What's in it for me? So when you are dealing with your stakeholders, the question you need to address to yourself is what's in it for them? Try to answer that question before you really plan your strategies to deal with them, go in a negotiation meeting with them, or whatever you really need to do with the stakeholders. It is very important to figure out what's in it for them so that you can see the things from their perspective, what it is that they may like. And that is very, very important to influence people, to persuade people. And the third one is people support what they create. If the people are a part of the creation process, they will support it because it becomes their baby, and they'll go to any length they need to go in order to make sure that they're able to make that plan or that strategy successful. So in a simple way, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but always think and pause about these three, pause and think about these three truths, that politics are remembering the above three truths and then managing your stakeholders accordingly. So if you have a difficult stakeholder, you remember, first of all, they're just people. They have emotions. They may not be emotionally stable today. How can I help the situation? What's in it for them? Why should they agree with me? Okay? And have they been the part of the creation process? Have they been properly and genuinely engaged? Have they been genuinely participating? Because when people participate genuinely, that is when you get their acceptance. And when I talk about acceptance or agreements, agreements only have a higher probability of being carried through if you meet three conditions. And those three conditions are the agreements you reach must be free of fear, threat, and coercion. Second one, agreements must be reasonable and fair. And the third one is you must have developed or you must try to develop mutual understanding, means meeting of the minds. When these three conditions are met, you have a higher probability that agreements that you reach are going to be met. Otherwise, people will try to get out of that one and try to find some technical points to get out of those agreements. And that is not really good. So let me talk a little bit about politically sensible people. This is really what I mean by political viewpoints and political sensible people. And I compare that because when I was writing my book on art of positive politics, I compared this landscape with an ocean. So I had naives as the flounders, sharks, and the political sensible people, I call them dolphins. And actually even ninja dolphins, who are very agile, who know what's going on, and who know what really actions to take in order to protect themselves as well as be successful. So for the politically sensible people, their viewpoint on politics, as opposed to for the naive who thinks politics is bad, and sharks who thinks politics is a great thing to meet some self-serving objectives, politically sensible people feel that politics is a part of life and they're very important and necessary to get things done. And also, politics is just a natural way to deal with people. Wherever there are people, remember, there is going to be politics. So if they have these viewpoints on politics, the question is, how would they deal with politics? Well, they would deal with politics to advance and further and help meet primarily goals and strategies and then department goals. So there is a certain sequence that they, or the priorities that they follow when they're dealing with politics. And that sequence is this one. So they have allies and champions who would really help them know the real organizational strategies and goals. Okay, like 5 top ones. Then they understand what their department goals are, because at the end of the projects, they have to go back to their home department, and then the project goals and the personal goals. So really, sharks sit here. They're always interested in me, personal goals. Naives always worry about project goals. They always keep talking about, I need more resources. I need more resources, because if I don't get it, my project will fall behind. My project will fall behind. Whereas the politically sensible people or the dolphins, they worry about organizational goals first, then department goals, and then the project goals will be done as well most of the time. What they are good at, what they are really good at, is they know how to align the project goals and benefits to the organizational strategies first, and then to the department. So anytime if the sharks are trying to give them a tough time and trying to really sort of make them unstable, they will always talk in the meetings that, just a minute, would you, if the shark is trying to steal some resources, then their attitude will be just a minute. Would you please help me? How, if we give the resources to you, how would it help meet the organizational goals and strategies? Now, sharks have a tendency to put a spin on it and so on. But if you're very good and you know the real organizational goals and strategies to your allies and champions, they can't fool you. And actually, as a matter of fact, if I just can give a further analogy to the ocean actually, then basically the shark thinks that you are a prickly fish. They don't want to have you. What they're looking for is a smooth fish, which are the naives, okay, or the flounders. When they find you're a prickly fish, they leave you alone. And that is really what you need to do to protect yourself. Remember, align your project goals to the organizational goals and strategies. Because at the end of the day, everybody is trying to meet organizational strategies and goals, and that's what they should do. Okay? So I think what is very important is to be enthusiastic about your projects. And I think that's very, very important. And enthusiasm, that's very, very important. As a positive politics person, one of the most important things is stay enthusiastic. And you can only enthuse others if you believe in the last 4 characters of enthusiasm, which is IASM, which means I am sold myself. So before you really do anything, before you really try to inspire and motivate your team, make sure that you believe in what you're trying to do. You have a strong conviction and you are sold yourself. And I think that's very, very important. Once you have that, then it is the next thing is that you can really inspire your team as well and motivate them. And what I really want to finish with is, do not try to do the great things, but do the little things with love. As I said before in my model, use TLC, which, as we all know, it also stands for tender loving care. This is how we need to treat our people. And one of the most important thing in communication point of view I want to tell you is, I love Stephen Covey. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people: first seek to understand and then be understood. That's again thing is, what's in it for them? Try to see the things from their perspective first. Once you got that, then you can talk about your things, and then you can really try to make sure that they understand you as well. I think I like to end here and maybe open up for any questions or answers. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Any questions? Just unmute yourself and ask a question, and then I can just answer it right away.
Hi, just a quick one for you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So the slide regarding what the Dolphins will aim to do, or their primary focus, was particularly interesting regarding organizational goals and
Yeah.
departmental goals. However, there are many people, I'm pretty sure, who are here right now or in projects who would think that they're generally thinking about organizational goals and departmental goals when they're doing their projects. However, they still meet resistance from some of the sharks, and
Yeah.
you have cases where your projects are undermined or are cancelled simply because of
Sharks.
political maneuvering, even when you think you are aligning them with organizational
I
goals.
think I think actually that is really where I find some of the project managers' weaknesses could be. You're not, if you the strong alignment you can do. I mean real alignment means convincing alignment of the project organizational goals and benefits to the organizational goals and benefits. I think you will be able to deal with the sharks much more easily. And on top of that, let me just tell you, there are bigger sharks and there are smaller sharks. And thank you very much for this question, because that triggered me to say things about that. So to deal with bigger sharks who are a little bit higher up in the organization as well, and you may not be very free to deal with them in the open meeting, you need to have your champions and allies. And now let me give you a definition of a champion. 2 key roles a champion is supposed to play. One, they are interested in your project and want you to succeed. And second, they will remove all the roadblocks that you face in getting your projects done. And those champions are generally at a higher place, because depending upon the complexity of the project. So if you are swimming in a pond with lots of sharks, okay, then you need to have your champions also swimming in the same pond, who will protect you that, hey, just a minute, stay away from Vijay. But for the little sharks who are just disruptive, waste your time, try to really just get the team sway in different directions, you should make ground rules and enforce. And the ground rules means, how are we going to manage the meetings? How are we going to manage the schedules? How are we going to manage conflicts? How are we going to facilitate the plans? So one of the things you may remember, and I think sorry that I need to refer to my book, but I have dealt with this in detail. So for the bigger sharks, get the help of your champions. And for the baby sharks, you should be able to take care of them by enforcing the ground rules. So the main approach that the politically sensible people use is increase their informal power, which includes networking, which includes expert power, and all those kind of things. And they expand network through continuously nurturing and feeding. They're enthusiastic contributors. So naturally, all the people higher up in the organization would know them, and they build a lot about their political capital. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but the emphasis I want to make is, again, think about again, am I able to align my organizational goals to my project goals to the organizational goals very, very good in an articulate this or not. That's where a little bit of a weakness or some more work may be needed. Does that answer your question? Because sometimes we think we are doing it just in a quick argument, but I think we have to do a little bit. more in terms of that the more people are on your side.
Right. And yes, thank you. I think that does answer the question. You know, it would always lead to more questions, but it does generally answer the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, please? Any other questions? Let me just tell you a little bit more, because I did introduce this idea of bigger sharks and the smaller sharks. So I think what is most important is, let me give you some idea about that. This is what you have to do. So that means this relationship between the project complexity and the positional power of your champion. That's very important. So if you have this kind of an organization chart where you have president, executive vice presidents, and then the VPs and the directors, and here is the director of projects, and you are project manager A, B, C. And what I try to draw in this one is, what is the complexity? And how I'm defining the complexity is not about the amount of budget or the schedule. What I mean is how many people, how many cross-functional departments or different companies you have to go through in order to get your work done. So this is how I am defining complexity, because all departments have their own way of doing things. All companies have their organization or their own way of doing things. So the more and more you have to interact with them and cross, the more complex your project will be, not just based on the budget. So that means a higher the complexity, then your champion has to be a higher positional level as well. So for example, if I have project manager A, I need a champion at least as an executive VP. If I have it at a lower level, then the shark will eat up your champion as well. And so if it is here, for example, it's like your project manager C, then you can get away with a champion at a director level, because your project is not very complex. It's just done only 2 or 3, only 1 or 2 teams are involved, 1 or 2 departments are involved. So you can get away with that. So the idea here is, the higher positional power your champion is needed if your project is more complex, to protect from the sharks. Because sharks are very subtle, you know, they are very, well, they're very smart as well, politically speaking. So you need to do all these tricks. Any other questions?
So, there is a question in the chat, which I can read to you. So
yeah, could you please, because I'm not reading the chat.
Yeah, no worries. So what tactics would you recommend if you're a new project manager taking on an existing troubled project that's full of politics? What initial steps would you take?
Let me give you a blunt answer and a political answer. Sometimes you should really see that if it is highly political, then it is quite possible that you are being brought into the project at the search for the guilty stage. And if that is the thing, try to stay away from that in a very polite way if you can. But if you don't have a choice, because most of us don't have a choice to say no these days, then make sure you find a good champion. I'm really after this word champion, because I was really a chapter lead for a chapter on the project human resources for the 4th edition of PMAC. And I wanted to introduce the word of the champion, but I think PMAC didn't quite take that one. The closest word to a champion we see in a project management word is a sponsor. And a sponsor may or may not be a good champion. When I talked about those 2 key roles, they're interested in your project genuinely and want you to succeed, not just really to monitor your project and so on. And secondly, is that they will remove roadblocks. Like they would really remove roadblocks, doesn't matter what type. So if you make sure, if you're being brought onto that project as a new project manager, that you have a champion at the right positional level. If you don't, you're going to run into a problem. There's no magic wand to this one. You're just being, maybe you're just being used as a political scapegoat. Any other questions? Have I answered that question?
It looks like it. There's no other comments. Yeah, she says yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I don't actually see any more questions in the chat box here.
Any questions at all? So you can see that actually, let me just see this. This is really how the intensity of politics goes up. The higher up you go means that now you have to cross more departments, you have to cross many, things in the organization. So when you're just managing your own project, the intensity of politics is low. But when you get to managing your programs, which is a set of several projects and then portfolios, the intensity of politics goes up, which means that we need more political skills and the leadership skills. So the higher up you go, the more important it becomes to learn how to navigate your politics properly. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
So I work in the public sector, and obviously it's very politically charged, and it's something that we're constantly having to deal with. And we have the added layer of, politics in front of like the public eye, right? So I guess that kind of makes our leaders risk averse. And so I'm not sure if you had any kind of, I guess, comments or suggestions of like how we can work with leaders who are more risk averse for political reasons.
So sometimes when I talk about this model of trust and agreement, I divide the stakeholders into 5 categories. One is your adversaries, your opponents, your allies, your bedfellows, which I means yes people, who mostly say yes on your face. When they turn around, they do things differently. And the fence sitters, who are just sitting on the fence. So that means their agreements could be high or low, depending upon what day of the week it is, but their trust level is low. Trust level means how much you can trust them. So when you're dealing, so these fence sitters are the ones which I call mostly bureaucrats. These are the people who will, when you go to them to ask for decisions, they will say, I need more analysis. You give them that, they said, I need more analysis, because they're scared of making any decisions. So best thing to do them is, you need to make them look good, means you need to groom them with good data, good information from time to time, so that so this more or less, you have to groom them a little bit to become more, not just risk-taking, but more intelligent enough to make rational decisions. And sometimes I say that in order to help your champions talk about in the big meeting of the counselors and so on, you need to give them those 5 slides, which gives them all the information in a crisp manner, so that when they talk about that, people will say, yeah, that makes sense. So I think you need to help them out a little bit in the beginning.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We still have 2 minutes before we get kicked out. Any questions or comments? Let me just tell you, finish with this thing. I always finish my sessions with let me just tell you what politics means. Politics came from a word poly-ticks. Poly means many, and ticks means blood-sucking organisms. Okay, so that is what politics is, what you're dealing with. I always finish my session with a prayer that I will just repeat. If at home you want to say with me, that's up to you. Lord, I hope my team never has to utter these words. We the unknown, led by the unknown, are trying to do too much with so little that we are now able to do everything with nothing. And that is never true. So make sure that again, the messages to take away from today's sessions are that you might think are the learning objectives are these. So you understood the 6 phases of a project, and then just make sure that you try to learn to be politically sensible, aligning your project goals to organizational goals, and 3 conditions for agreement. Remember, free of any fear, threat, and coercion, meeting of the minds and the agreements have to be reasonable and fair. Okay. Any other questions?
No, but you got some laughs on the politics, breaking down the politics words. So that's
What
got
it
some
means?
laughs there.
Yeah, I should have done that in the beginning, but I thought that's what I will end up with.
And on a funny note, I like it. Anyways, thank you so much. It was a great presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share my ideas. But if anybody needs it, I think you can look into that book of The Art of Positive Politics, where it has all those details that we talked about in a very simple, easy to read language.